Live from Toronto, Canada, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrin from Zoomer Radio, AM 740.
And welcome to the Audio Imaginarium. Come on in, weary traveler, hang your cloak on a peg, grab a stool, and come gather around the fire. There are stories to be told, and you are among friends. Carlos Cagina is my technical producer. Ryan White is my live stream producer. And yes, we are live streaming on my YouTube channel tonight, Strange Planet. Please hit that red sub button if you haven't already done so. Tonight marks the 12th anniversary of this radio program. Sunday, August the 16th, 2009. We launched The Conspiracy Show on Zoomer Radio, AM 740. And thanks to Moses Neimer and everyone at Zoomer Media for all of your support over the years. Not a lot of radio stations would stick with a radio program like this, particularly in these times that we live in. Before we get rolling, a quick shout out to a brand new Star Chamber level Patreon supporter, Dr. E. Lyle Gross. Thank you so much for your amazing support, Dr. Gross. Your generosity is truly appreciated. And if any of you listening are interested in becoming an official supporter of this program, Strange Planet, you can go to patreon.com/Strange Planet. Patreon.com/Strange Planet. There's a whole host of different tiers for you to choose from. All right. Well, 1 week ago today, this is a sad anniversary. We lost Paul Hellyer, the Honorable Paul Hellyer, passed away Sunday, August the 8th at the age of 98. And Mr. Hellyer was on this program a number of times, maybe a half dozen times over the years. And of course, in 2005, he went public about his belief in the UFO ET reality during a speech, a now very famous speech at the University of Toronto. And that was supposed to be kind of a one-off speech, but it became an all-consuming passion for Paul, and he spent the next 15 years speaking at UFO conferences and writing books on the subject. And this hour, we'll pay tribute to Paul. Victor Viggiani, the executive director of Zealand Communications and Zealand News Network, knew Paul very well. They traveled the country together. Victor was instrumental, of course, in convincing Mr. Hellyer to speak out in 2005. In the second hour, Victor Viggiani stays with me, and he and I will welcome Daniel P. Sheehan to the program. He's a constitutional and public interest lawyer and a public speaker, political activist, and passionate UFO disclosure advocate. He'll be here to talk about his upcoming 5-day conference, Making Contact. Extraterrestrials Are Here. And that's happening August the 18th to the 22nd. And Daniel is also legal counsel for Luis Elizondo, the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, and an unpublicized U.S. government program that was created in 2007 that was committed to the investigation of UFOs. Now Elizondo finds himself in a battle with Pentagon officials who are denying that he had any role at all in the ATIP program. Isn't that just like the Pentagon? So we'll find out more about that with Daniel in hour 2. But this hour, we look back on the work of the Honorable Paul Hellyer.
It wasn't the fact that there are UFOs, which I am totally convinced there are, that made me go public. I'm concerned about the future of our society, concerned about the future of our planet, and I'm concerned about governments that claim to be democratic, where somebody other than the elected officials are running the show. You might say, you've got to be kidding, but I'm not kidding. And then the second major issue is the question of saving the planet literally.
The time has come to lift the veil of secrecy and let the truth emerge so there can be a real and informed debate. Who knows, that could be just the antidote the world needs to end its greed-driven, power-centered madness. Thank you. Are as real as the airplanes that fly over your head.
All right, there he is, the late Honorable Paul Hellyer. Here to help us pay tribute to Paul is Victor Viggiani. Victor, of course, no stranger to the program. He's a retired school principal from Toronto. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology and Psychology and a Master's in Educational Administration and Curriculum Development. His research and analysis of anomalous aerial phenomenon spans over 30 years. His experience involves UFO sightings, report investigation, counseling work with individuals reporting anomalous experiences, presentations, and journalism in the field of ETI disclosure issues, and of course, the executive director of Zealand Communications and Zealand News Network. Victor, welcome back. How are you?
I'm just fine, Richard, and it's such a pleasure to be with you again. Thanks a lot for that great introduction.
All right. Well, do you want to just share maybe a few details concerning Paul's passing? And I know you attended his funeral, and you can tell us a little bit about that. What happened to Paul? I know he was getting up there, 98. He just celebrated, I think, his 98th birthday.
That's right.
What happened? He had a fall in July, didn't he?
That's right. On June 15th, I believe it was, I was informed by his family representative that Paul had a fall. I'm not sure why he lives in a condominium here in Toronto on the lakeshore, and he was for some reason in the garage of the condominium, and he had a fall, and at that time he somehow tripped either over a stair or whatever it was, and he hit his head, and which caused a very, very serious injury to his head, and there was some serious bleeding on his brain, and from that point he was taken to the hospital, and he was monitored for several days, actually about 2 or 3 weeks after, and it was a very, very unfortunate situation, but they managed to stop the bleeding when he was in the hospital, and from there they just monitored him, and eventually about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks later, he was brought home on his own assistance because he wanted to just be at home. So they managed to bring him home in a hospital bed, and they provided all kinds of care for him 24/7 at home. And eventually we were informed by the family. He had a series of ups and downs. He got better, and then he got a little bit worse and got better again. But eventually, just last weekend on August the 8th, he did pass away with his entire family surrounding him.
I know you went to his funeral, and you had a very interesting conversation with, I guess, the pastor that officiated at the funeral. Can you share those details with us?
Yeah, what happened was we went to the funeral, and it was a bright sunny day outside the church on the Methodist Church here in Toronto on Queen Street, Queen and Church. And we gathered outside, and there was a number of people who gathered around just sort of chatting before we went into the church. And from there, we sat in the church, and there's some organ play, and everyone was fairly relaxed, and with people who knew Paul. I would say there were probably about 125 people in the church at the time. The church holds over 300, but because of the COVID situation, there's a distancing in place. And through the whole thing, several people spoke. There was some organ music and several readings. But at some point, about halfway through, Reverend Malcolm Sinclair, who was the rector at one time at the Methodist Church here in Toronto, gave the eulogy for Paul. And as eulogies generally go, you hear all kinds of great things about the deceased, and how Reverend Sinclair knew Paul. They'd gone to lunch several times together, and it seemed to me that those two became very, very close, as indicated by the number of lunches they went to, and several times Paul would indicate that he wanted to talk about certain things, et cetera, et cetera. But during the whole eulogy, which was totally unexpected to me, Richard, the Reverend mentioned that Paul, amidst all of the other political situations that he was involved in over his life, being Prime Minister of Defense and Deputy Prime Minister and all the other kind of things that he was involved in, the minister actually mentioned the extraterrestrial issue that Paul was involved in from 2005 and onward to this day. And that sort of caught me off guard. And after the whole ceremony was finished, there was some beautiful organ music, and we moved out of the church, and they sort of gathered on the lawn in front of the church. I made my way to the Reverend, and I asked him. I said, "My goodness, Reverend Sinclair, I was absolutely fascinated by the fact that you felt it necessary to mention that Paul was involved with, UFOs and extraterrestrials, and you actually brought it up at the eulogy. My goodness, how did that happen?" And essentially, the Reverend indicated to me that Paul wanted him to actually bring this issue up within, if it ever did happen, that he would have a chance to eulogize Paul. And that's how it happened. And I was very, very surprised that the Methodist minister would bring that kind of thing up during a eulogy. But the fact of the matter was that the Reverend did feel it necessary to bring that up and to make people aware that Paul was very, very interested in and committed to the extraterrestrial disclosure issue. And that's I was very surprised about that.
Right.
I could tell within the eyes of the Reverend that this man believed Paul to the nth degree, that he felt that this was a very real issue and that it needed to be talked about in a public forum like a eulogy.
So did Reverend Sinclair actually tell you that he believed, as Paul did, in the UFO ET reality?
Yes, it was extremely it was really touching the way it happened, because he's a very tall man, as the Reverend was, as also Paul was. But we both had our masks on. We're standing outside the church, and I'm looking at this man directly into his eyes, Richard. And I could tell that the way the Reverend was articulating his feeling about Paul's belief in this, that he actually believed that Paul believed it, and so did he. And actually told me that Paul had this UFO experience up at Arundel Lodge with his family and friends on the dock. So it was not beyond belief. The Reverend did, in fact, believe that Paul believed it, and so did he.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the last time you and Paul and I were together on this program, and it seems to me it was around the anniversary of his 2005 address at the University of Toronto, which, of course, you were very instrumental in convincing Paul Hellyer to speak out publicly for the first time about UFOs. That was it September 2005?
That's correct.
I'm wondering if we did, was it a 15th anniversary? Maybe was it the 2020? Perhaps?
I think it was 2015, if I recall correctly, that we did the sort of a recounting of what Paul was involved in at the time and how much water had passed under the bridge since 2005. I think that was the last time that we did it, Richard.
Well, that was the last time we spoke about that, but we did have him on after that, because he had he published, I think, 4 or 5 books in the the last several years of his life. And here's this is a clip from, I don't know if this was the last time he was on. I think not, but this was from 2017. And you and I were talking to him about the, I don't know if it's on the anniversary of that famous address, but we asked him about whether his family or friends were talking to him, maybe even advising him not to speak out because of his legacy. And here's what he had to say about that. This is Paul Hellyer appearing on this program, I believe, back in 2017.
They talked about that later when I'd done it, but it was really a matter of conscience, Richard, because after reading the day after Roswell and realizing that it was the truth, and then, as Victor has not mentioned, confirming this with the retired United States Air Force general, who, when I called him, he had been told what I was reading. And when I called him, he said, "Every word is true and more." And so with that confirmation and him going into the more for about 20 minutes and telling me that there had been face-to-face meetings between the United States officials and sentient beings from other star systems, I was confirmed in my conviction, which I already had then, that I should go public because I was afraid that at some stage the United States the Air Force might get us into a galactic war, knowing their sort of propensity to shoot first and ask questions after. So I thought the American people don't know what's going on, and they should, because this is a very important issue, and I have a responsibility to speak the truth so that some people at least will know what is actually happening and should take whatever action they feel is required as a result. So that's sort of how it got going. And the other interesting part of it was I was getting married a week to the day after the speech at the University of Toronto. So I phoned my fiancée, who was the widow of my best friend ever, who I'd known for 30 or 40 years, and told her about it. And she was not wildly enthusiastic, but she said, if you feel it's important in the public interest, go ahead and do it. And I said, well, it'll just be a one-time thing, I'll get it out in the
famous
public,
last
and then it'll be
words.
all over.
Right,
So I didn't
yes.
mean to tell her an untruth, because I have a long, long reputation of telling the truth, and I pride myself on doing that. But it turned out that once I went public, then the papers started coming in from all over the world, some classified and some not, and dozens of books. And then there were a lot of people who wanted to brief me, including Dr. Stephen Greer and a whole list of others that were interested in meeting and talking to me. And my learning curve started going up and up and up, and it's been going up ever since.
All right, that was the late Honorable Paul Hellyer on this program back in, I think, 2017. And so his wife is Sandra, is it?
That's right, yes.
Right. So she was expecting this was to be a one-off. Did you ever have conversations with Sandra about, how that one-off turned into really a passion and obsession for Paul for the rest of his days?
Well, it's really kind of strange that you should say that, because on so many occasions, Richard, it happened that for one reason or another, I would have to call Paul on the telephone for just a consultation on something or other. And to be quite honest, Paul very rarely ever answered the phone by himself. He was not the first one to the telephone. And during some of those conversations, or when I did call, Sandra was always the first one to pick up the phone. I'm not sure exactly why that happened. It's a family dynamic, but I had occasions to just sort of chat with her about this whole thing, and she never really doubted how intensely Paul felt about what he was doing. She never really felt that it was something that she could dissuade him from doing. And I always felt in my limited conversations or short conversations with her that she had to support what he was doing, because as you heard in that last clip, Paul had a propensity to tell the truth and to be very upfront and authentic about what he spoke about. And she made no bones about the fact that no matter what she said or what any family member said or what anybody else said about what Paul had to do, was that he needed to speak the truth. He needed to speak what he knew about this issue, and as in every other issue that came up. And Paul was not one to be set back or set aside from anybody who challenged him on anything. And I'll name people who he came into not conflict with necessarily, but he took umbrage with. Even people like the Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Trudeau. He and Pierre had some very significant differences on many, many different issues. And Paul was not one to stand back or to step aside from any kind of controversy at all. And he would challenge anyone when the truth came forward to be spoken. So in essence, Sandra stood by that with Paul, and she knew that no matter what she did or said, and even any family members, that Paul was going to speak what he needed to say about this issue and any other issue. So yes, she was very instrumental in supporting him and articulating to me that this is something that Paul was driven to talk about. So, yes, in answer to your question, she was very fully supportive, maybe reluctant at the beginning, but eventually realized this is something she had to do to support Paul.
In other words, she never said, "You, Victor, you're the one who dragged him into this."
Well, no, actually, she never did it. It's great that you should mention that. Paul, on a number of occasions, when we would do interviews or we were on, some sort of, tour. We did our Across Canada tour with the Modern Knowledge tour. He went out of his way occasionally to say that Victor Viggiani was the one who got me into this, and my goodness, how come this happened? Yeah, so he did blame me, sort of tongue in cheek, with the whole eventuality as to what he got himself into on September 27th, 2005, at the University of Toronto. Yeah, he did do that.
All right, we'll take a quick time out, come back, and continue our tribute to the late Honorable Paul Hellyer. Victor Viggiani from Zealand News Network and Zealand Communications stays with us. Just a reminder, coming up in the second hour, Daniel P. Sheehan will be here to talk about his 5-day conference called Making Contact. Stay with us.
Curiosity, or did the devil make you do it? Whatever the reason, welcome back to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serra from Zoomer Radio. To talk to Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Here's a resolution for 2021. Reduce stress and enhance your immune system. ESS60 from C60 Evo. C60 is the carbon-60 molecule known to deliver more than 172 times the power of vitamin C. 172 times. ESS60 is the purest form of C60, a known antiviral, antibacterial, and anti-inflammatory remedy that works. ESS60 neutralizes free radicals from cell metabolization and external toxins to help minimize inflammation and maximize detoxification. Further, people report better sleep, more energy, and renewed mental clarity when they take our ESS60 organic oil. To order your miracle molecule ESS60, go to c60evo.com/Richard-Serrett. c60evo.com/Richard-Serrett. Buy now and save 10% by using the coupon code EVRS at checkout. Again, use the coupon code EVRS at checkout.
Quality and Linea Intima is all about quality, so we go hand in hand. This is the station for us.
Every day, more and more people across Ontario are receiving their COVID-19 vaccines. Health Canada approved vaccines are conveniently available in hospitals, doctors' offices, pharmacies, and mass vaccination sites. And every dose brings us closer to what we missed. So join millions of Ontarians. Do your part and get your shot. Visit ontario.ca/bookvaccine. Paid for by the Government of Ontario.
The truth is not out there. It's right here. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serra from Zoomer Radio.
All right. Victor Viggiani stays with us, Zealand News Network, Zealand Communications, and we're paying tribute to the late Paul Hellyer, who passed away 1 week ago at the age of 98. And we were talking about that famous speech that you were instrumental, in convincing Paul Hellyer to speak out publicly for the first time. And at that point, he became the highest-ranking G8, I guess, government official or former government official to actually speak out about UFOs. That's historical, and you had a major part in that, Victor. Now, we back in 2017, we also talked to Paul not only about his legacy and whether his family and friends were comfortable with him speaking out. We also talked about what really got the ball rolling for him. I mean, I know he had a UFO sighting, but he was somewhat skeptical. And then, of course, he read a book, The Day After Roswell by Colonel Corso. And we asked him about whether how he came to read the book and whether he believed it at first. Here's how that sounded back in 2017. Here once again, Paul Hellyer. It's interesting because if I'm remembering correctly, an earlier conversation that we had, this started off as kind of just some summer reading. You were taking some books up to the cottage. Someone said, here, read this one too.
It was Pierre Junot who sent me the book.
Right.
And this was after he had been trying for 2 years to get me interested. And when he sent me this, I thought it would make good summer reading.
Right.
I couldn't find it when I wanted to take it up in 2004. So I had to read The Life of Pi, which I found quite entertaining, and didn't know until near the end that it was fiction. But this one was different. And in 2005, I was looking for another book, couldn't find it, and there staring me in the face was The Day After Roswell, and so I took that, and that was the beginning of this long journey.
Right. I mean, it really changed the trajectory of your life. When you're reading Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, does it hit you immediately as credible, or are you reserving judgment until you can call some of your contacts in the U.S. for verification?
No, it didn't take long for me to realize that it was credible, because I recognized the names of the generals, most of them, and many of the air bases, and I was familiar with those from my time in the Department of National Defense. So it had the tenor of a true story from the time I really got into it.
All right. There's Paul Hellyer speaking on this program back in 2017 about The Day After Roswell. Victor, you had many lunches with Paul Hellyer. Did you ever talk about anything other than UFOs, or was it all consuming for him?
Yeah, that's a good point. I during our many lunches together, both on meeting informally with him, talking on the phone, but sitting face to face with him at lunches that we had, there were other issues that came forward. I know he was not someone who was reticent about talking about other things with respect to government secrecy and the way in which governments tended to avoid any kind of discussion about this, and that's something that confirmed his belief that governments were either hiding something or that they were very, very highly reluctant to talk about the UFO issue. And that's something that really bothered him. That, in addition to some economic issues that he was very involved in too, with respect to the economic reform that he was involved in, there were these things were something that really got under Paul's skin. And you could tell that when he began talking about any of these issues, that it bothered him. It bothered him that governments that were elected by the people and for the people would be reticent to talk about these kinds of things, and not only reticent, but proactively keeping these things secret. And that is something that I learned about Paul, that he was extremely upset about, extremely concerned about, that governments that were elected by people they'd keep these kinds of things from them. And this is something that motivated Paul very, very strongly in all of our discussions, that he went out of his way to always talk about the fact that governments were there for the people, or were supposed to be there for the people. But in these kinds of incidences that were of intense and major concern to people, that governments chose to deny the fact that certain things were going on. And this is something that Paul very, very strongly opposed. And he opposed it to the point of almost becoming alienated within his political career. And that's one of the things that he suffered from with respect to his interaction with Pierre Trudeau, as I mentioned, and to many other people within the Liberal Party. So he was in fact a maverick, because he believed that governments were there to tell the truth, but they did not always do that.
Did he have regrets? Not regrets, but did he ever say things like, geez, I wish I was 30 years younger, or starting my political career over again now? If I knew what I knew then, what I know now, everything would be different?
I never really got that sense that he was looking back in that way. And I would venture to say that if he knew back 30 or 40 years ago, what he knew now, and what he came forward about in 2005. If he'd have known that then, I'm convinced that he would have indeed stepped forward to bring this up. Because, as a matter of fact, this is a point of interest, that in the Library and Archives Canada, there are letters, and this is really going to be very strange to understand, but there are letters written by Paul Hellyer in response to citizens about the UFO issue. People would write letters to him as a Minister of Defense back then and ask Mr. Hellyer whether or not these UFOs were real. And I have a couple of letters, two specific ones. They were memos in the Library and Archives Canada. And Mr. Hellyer at that time towed the party line and said, no, there's nothing to these things. We have no evidence about things, and there's nothing that's come across my desk that would prove that these UFO or flying saucers or whatever they called them back at that time were real. And I brought this to the attention of Paul, and he back then, that's what he knew. He didn't feel that as a fervent belief. He just did not know that these things were in fact as real as they were at the time. So he towed the party line at the time, and I think that's something that he probably grew to regret, but not knowing what the eventualities and the realities about that really were. So it was something that I know that he regretted, and I think if he had to do it all over again, and he knew then what he knew now, he would definitely be someone who would come forward with the evidence about what NORAD knew, or what the Royal Canadian Air Force knew at the time. So yes, my sense would be that he would have stood up very frankly about this issue. But then again, the evidence was not as forceful then for him as it was when he came forward in 2005.
But can you imagine if, again, he was 30, 40 years younger? Mm-hmm. He was still Minister of Defense, and he read Corso's book the day after Roswell. How and again, as Minister of Defense, how that could have changed history. Absolutely unimaginable. Now, I want to play another clip here. This is so after he reads Corso's book, he calls one of his, I guess, an old colleague who was a U.S. Army or a U.S. Air Force general to see what he could tell him about Corso's book. Let's have a listen. This is Paul Hellyer back in 2017. It's interesting because if I'm remembering correctly, wrong clip. Let's play this one. Here we go.
I was very anxious to check it out with this retired Air Force general that was a friend of my nephew and who I had met and knew, just for verification. And of course, when I phoned him, and even before I could say hello and how are you, he said every word is true and more. Well, that's a good start. Right.
And I know, to my knowledge, you've never identified this person aside from a retired Air Force general, correct?
You're right.
And was that conversation contingent on you never revealing his name, or?
It wasn't contingent on it, but I know that he would be I know from what happened later that he would have been in terrible trouble had I done that.
When you say what happened later, are you able to share that?
No, well, there was one of the officers that trailed me around for a year or two, and wanted me to say who it was because he was going to beat him up, and so on.
A U.S. military official trailed you for a year wanting his name so that he could go and
absolutely
beat him up.
And the CIA phoned me too, and Paula Harris managed to somehow divert that one.
Did they ever threaten you directly, Paul?
Not directly, no.
No.
Although they tried to feed me disinformation several times, so that I would repeat something that they had given me, that they knew they could then show was only part truth or whatever, in an effort to discredit me. They tried to do that several times, but I, being an old farm boy and knowing the difference between wheat and chaff, I managed to avoid being sucked into any of those situations.
All right. Victor, we'll take a quick time out. When we come back, let's circle back and I hate that phrase. Why did I use it? It's circle back. It must be banished. Anyway, we'll talk about what we just heard. Paul Hellyer being trailed by a shadowy figure from the military-industrial complex, and then fed disinformation by the CIA. We'll pick up on that with Victor Viggiani when we come back. Stay with us.
If you're sure your phone isn't tapped, call now. 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Attention Giants. We ask that you take the news to your giant friends and families that the borders of Little Canada are now officially.
Hey there, I'm hard at work on another edition of Inner Sanctum, my free monthly newsletter. Inner Sanctum features my monthly brief, a column of my thoughts and opinions on what's happening in the world. It features a spotlight on a past guest, a look ahead to an upcoming episode of my weekly syndicated radio program, The Conspiracy Show. It features a look at this month in conspiracy and UFO history, and my Conspiracy Unlimited podcast episode pick of the month, and so much more. To get your free monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, delivered to your email inbox, just go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on Inner Sanctum and register. It's fast, easy, and again, absolutely free.
Active and vocal.
Like Jillian says, don't wait until you have a problem. Get tested.
Getting a hearing test is very easy.
Do it for your family. Do it for yourself. Hearing Life now has virtual services. Go to hearinglife.ca for details. That's hearinglife.ca.
Hearing Life cannot doubt my hearing care clinic for life.
If you have a collector car business, whether it's a dealership, a shop, a museum, or storage facility, you'll need special insurance from a company that knows special cars. Haggerty. Along with years of experience, Haggerty offers full coverage, including guaranteed value for the vehicles in your care. Learn more about Haggerty and quote insurance at haggerty.ca/DCG.
Keeping an eye on the New World Order. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett from Zoomer Radio. To speak with Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free 1-866-740-4740.
And we're back with Victor Viggiani as we pay tribute to the late Paul Hellyer, and the clip that I played before the break, Paul talking about that conversation he had with an unnamed U.S. Air Force general, telling him everything he read in Corso's book The Day After Roswell was true, everything and more. Then he talked about being trailed by some mysterious figure with the Pentagon, perhaps, who wanted to know the identity of that U.S. Air Force general so that I suppose he could, he said beat him up, quote unquote. He talked about Paula Harris, UFO journalist, photographer, Paula Harris, getting him out of that situation. Do you know anything about that? What did Paula Harris do?
Well, I know that I don't know anything specifically about what Paula did, but I know that with Paula's contacts, she managed to, highlight the fact that Paul could have been and was in fact being quote unquote followed by that. Now, what her contacts knew about what Paul was doing or how she might have dissuaded him, that contact, I really don't have any specific information about that, Richard, to be really honest with you.
Did he ever talk to you in any more detail about being trailed by this individual? I mean, who does that? They want to find out the identity of this person so they can go and quote unquote beat them up?
Well, I know for a fact that at one point during our conversations, Paul and I did discuss, and he actually asked me. I don't have any specific time reference on this, but I think it was about a year or so after he came forward in 2005, it appeared that Paul wanted to dig more deeply into this issue. And he asked me, and I remember specifically the phone conversation that we had. He asked me, he said, "Who are the people that I need to talk to about this?" And one of the people that that he mentioned and that I mentioned was Shirley MacLaine. And that was one of the individuals who had, because she had been on, I guess it was Larry King Live at one point, and she and Larry King spoke about the whole UFO issue. And he wanted to know more about what she knew about this. So I'm not sure if Paul had seen that episode of the Larry King Live, but I referenced Shirley MacLaine. I said, "You may wish to speak with Shirley MacLaine about this." And he went down to California, in Los Angeles, and I know he did have several meetings with Shirley MacLaine about this issue. And of course, as many of your people are aware of, that Shirley MacLaine had her own UFO kind of belief system, in addition to knowing about Dennis Kucinich. His experience with UFOs, and Dennis Kucinich did articulate that in one of the presidential election campaign interviews.
Kucinich, former congressman, U.S. House of Representatives for, I believe it was Ohio.
That's correct, yes.
Right.
And he came forward and was roundly criticized for even articulating anything about that. So Paul had some very intense conversations with Shirley MacLaine about her belief in this whole UFO issue, and also about why Dennis Kucinich would have the courage to come forward in a presidential debate to actually talk about, or at least articulate, that he had had his own experience. So it was very clear to me that Paul was intent on going to the deepest ends of his, I guess, search about who in a priority, kind of either celebrities or other politicians who would want to articulate this. And so Paul was intent on digging very, very deeply into this. And it was something that I know that Shirley MacLaine was very, very intense about. And with respect to him being followed by, or at least, inadvertently intimidated by the CIA, I would have absolutely no doubt in my mind that people like Shirley MacLaine, Dennis Kucinich, and Paul Hellyer were looked at very, very intensely about what they believed and how they wanted to come forward about this publicly. So I have no doubt in my mind that what Paul talked about and being followed by certain individuals was in fact very, very true and very authentic.
We just got a couple of minutes here before we roll into the break. When we come back, we'll play more of our interview with Paul, and he talks more about what was discussed with that U.S. Air Force general. Mm-hmm. But just briefly, I know his first book, Light at the End of the Tunnel, mm-hmm. or his first book in terms of this field, this
right.
Subject matter. He had you read that manuscript. Tell me about it.
Well, it was very odd that that he called me and he said, "I'm about to write this book, or I've written this book or manuscript, and I just need some sort of editing with respect to the whole thing." And we met for lunch, and he gave me the manuscript of it, and it was, a typed manuscript on one side of each page, and it was, my goodness, Richard, it was at least 2 inches thick. It was just huge. So I took it home, and it just happened to be that I was going away on vacation for about 2 weeks. So I took it with me, and I read it very intently, and he asked me to make notes on it. And there was so much in this book, not just about the UFO issue, but with respect to his intense involvement with meeting with other foreign leaders, defense ministers of his own parallel kind of political situation, and other people that he had been involved in. And it was just way, way too long. And I guess he just sort of opened up his old mind and just wrote this thing. So I suggested certain kinds of edits within the whole things that I thought were kind of not irrelevant, but not necessarily pointing to the reader. And he edited that down, and it came out to be about 1/3 of the size of what he actually put forward. And with respect to the UFO issue, he was spot on with most of the things that I thought were important. I very circumspectly did not edit or kind of discount much of what he had said with respect to that. So factually speaking, he had everything down pat with respect to what he knew, who he had spoken to about this whole issue, and how he came to believe what he believed. So that part of the book was extremely well articulated and really didn't need that much editing.
All right, we'll take another time out, come back, and play some more from the late Honorable Paul Hellyer. Victor Viggiani from Zealand News Network stays with us. More in a moment. Don't go away.
You want the truth? You can handle the truth. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio. To get the truth, call Richard now at 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Introducing LCBO Summer Hot List, a list of refreshing ways to help.
I don't need to tell you how important building and sustaining a healthy immune system is these days. And just in time, my good friends at Get the Tea are offering a special package called the Immune Builder. You get 1 month's supply of Life Change Super Tea. That's 8 bags. 1 bottle of Bioastin. That's 75 capsules. Now, Bioastin or astaxanthin is known as one of nature's most powerful antioxidants and provides a wide range of impressive health benefits. The Immune Builder also includes 1 bottle of Potent C Wild Alaskan Sockeye Omegas. That's 90 gel caps. And 1 copy of the book Natural Astaxanthin, Hawaii's Super Nutrient by Dr. William Sears. There's so much more than tea at getthetea.com. Get your Immune Builder right now. Not available in any store. Use the code UNLIMITED and all your purchases ship for free. The Immune Builder from getthetea.com.
Bitcoin in slices. You don't have to buy one entire Bitcoin. So even if you're relatively risk adverse, you can start with as little as $50.
As opposed to stocks, where you have to buy one entire unit at its full price. We asked Netcoins for advice on starting out with cryptocurrencies.
The best way to learn about Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency is to actually experience it firsthand. I usually recommend starting out with a small amount.
Think pizza and order just a slice.
We've also got a great resource called the Crypto Academy at netcoins.ca that addresses a lot of the initial questions that people have when they're starting.
And if you have more questions?
We've got an amazing support team that's accessible via email, phone, live chat, and also on social media. Reach out whenever you need help.
Who's hungry for Bitcoin? Get started for as little as $50. Go to netcoins.ca and learn more.
Exploring theories, uncovering facts, and offering a different view of the universe. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett on Zoomer Radio. To speak with Richard live, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Welcome back. Victor Viggiani stays with us as we pay tribute to the late Honorable Paul Hellyer. And we were talking about his conversation with his unnamed Air Force General, U.S. Air Force General, about Philip Corso's book and the UFO ET reality. Here's Paul speaking about more of that conversation.
I was.
Well, here we go. I wanted to go back to this conversation with his Air Force General. Some of his revelations to you about various races of ETs that were interacting. Can you walk us through some of those points that he made with you on the phone?
No, he didn't get into that. I think, apart from the fact that U.S. officials, that first of all, the book was, in his opinion, 100% true. I don't think that was quite, probably 95%. But he told me something that I didn't know, which I think a lot of people don't know, and that is that when you get into the argument of nothing travels faster than the speed of light, it isn't true, and that gravity travels faster than the speed of light, and that most of the spaceships are anti-gravity, And there are other, we don't get into wormholes and that sort of thing tonight, but there are other means of speeding up travel through space that we just didn't know about and weren't in the books, of course, that we were taught during school. So people like even one of my sons, he says, well, nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. That isn't correct. That's what I call the old reality.
There you go, the old reality. Gravity traveling faster than the speed of light. Did he have those kind of deep conversations based on the new reality, the science behind UFO propulsion systems?
Definitely. We spoke at length about that kind of thing in several of the interviews that I did with him, personally, and even in conversations. Paul was definitely not a quantum physicist by any stretch of the imagination, but because of his interaction with other individuals who had insights into that, Paul became convinced that this whole idea of quantum physics and the quantum reality, and then the idea of connectivity of all parts of matter within the cosmos was definitely played a part in the way that these UFO so-called craft moved within the cosmos, and this kind of entanglement allowed, and he believed this very firmly, that this form of entanglement allowed every single particle of matter in the cosmos to be connected to every other single particle, which kind of stands very, very true with respect to quantum physics. So that somehow these extraterrestrial civilizations and the beings that pilot their craft have some sort of way of moving within the cosmos instantaneously from one point in the universe to another, which fits in line with a lot of the ideas of quantum physics, that you automatically have access to some form of energy, the zero-point energy, to move from one part of the universe instantaneously to another. And that's what enables these craft to move the incredible distances that are involved within the cosmos. So there really is no such thing as time and distance being far-fetched with these extraterrestrial craft. And that's how they come to this planet and other planets too, to manifest themselves. And that's the way they come into our own airspace. They come in, we see these blinking lights or these craft, and they're able to move instantaneously, 30, 40, 50,000 miles an hour in our own atmosphere, Richard, and without creating a sonic boom or literally destroying themselves in our own atmosphere. So somehow these craft have access to this kind of energy, and Paul believed this very, very fervently. And I know that in his display of his own account of a UFO, it moved from one part of the sky to another within a blink of a second. So he became very convinced that this whole idea of quantum physics and entanglement was indeed part of how these extraterrestrial civilizations can not only move, within time and space, but here on this lonely planet in the way they do here, and surprising all of us about their reality and the way they manifest themselves in our own airspace.
He talked about the different races of ETs. Did he ever talk to you about how he came to believe that or know that?
I think he in speaking with, I know Shirley MacLaine had a very intense effect on how Paul believed these kinds of things. And I think he also was involved with Charles Holt with respect to some of the meetings that the United States government had with these extraterrestrial beings at Muroc Air Force Base. So I think Paul came out on a bit of a limb on that. I'm not sure exactly where he got all of his information about the number of races that were engaging the planet, but he named a number like 57 different races that were actually involved in engaging here in the planet. And I think that's something that Paul was roundly criticized for. And I'm not sure exactly how he developed all of those kind of insights with respect to the number of races that were involved with the planet, but I know he did very fervently believe that the Eisenhower administration was in fact in contact with one or two at least the bare minimum, extraterrestrial civilization, and he believed that fervently. And to be really honest with you, that is something that I've come to believe personally actually did happen, because there was a Catholic bishop involved there. McIntyre, Bishop of Chicago, was involved with that, and there's a whole story about how the Catholic Church was in fact involved with respect to the UFO extraterrestrial issue. So it's all entwined in a very, very tight knot of information with respect to how government and the Vatican were involved with these extraterrestrial races. And I'm going to believe that to the day that I die, that the Vatican does in fact know much, much more about that. And I think Paul was a believer in that authentic part of the UFO ET issue.
Did he ever express interest in making contact, like Dr. Stephen Greer's Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind?
Mm-hmm. Himself doing
yes.
that?
Yes.
Actually, no, not really. I know that he and Stephen Greer had a very close relationship, because several years after Paul came forward, Stephen Greer and Stephen Bassett came to Toronto, and we hosted the three of them at De La Salle College in a sort of a symposium which gathered. And I think that what happened there was he became involved with Stephen with respect to these contact issues, but it wasn't necessarily something that Stephen was able to convince Paul to do, because Stephen Greer has these CE5 contact experiences. To my knowledge, that's not something that Paul became very involved in. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's not something that he bought into completely. It was more of a belief in the documentation with respect to the UFO issue, rather than encountering these things. But I do know that one of the producers of the Making Contact, which we'll talk about later, Mark Sims had an encounter with an actual extraterrestrial being. And this is something that Paul Hellyer talked about with Mark at length about, because of this engagement that Mark Sims had with an extraterrestrial being. He shared that with Paul. And that was something that really brought Paul to the forefront of actually believing that individuals do have the capacity to encounter a very personal relationship with some of these extraterrestrial beings. And that's not something that Paul talked about publicly a lot, but I know that he and Mark did have long conversations about that.
We've just got about a minute and a half here before the before the break at the top of the hour, and then we'll bring Daniel P. Sheehan onto the program to talk about his conference, Making Contact, and representing Luis Elizondo. Just in the time that remains, do you think there's another Paul Hellyer, someone of his, let's say, gravitas, his position, waiting in the wings, who was inspired by Paul Hellyer, who will make his pronouncement on a public stage about UFOs?
In a Canadian sense, or just generally speaking?
Yeah. Well, maybe generally.
Yeah, generally speaking, I'm going to go out on a limb, Richard, and say something that will be controversial, and I know that with respect to politics and everything, but I am sensing that, or I do sense that anyone who does get involved in this issue, once they grab onto it because of either the political gravitas of it or the intensity of it, and they actually commit themselves to the issue, have an issue themselves with this personally. And I'm going to say, and this is, I can be criticized for this, and I'll stand out on a limb on it, but someone like Mark Rubio, the senator who has come forward with the UAP issue in the Senate Intelligence Committee, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Mark Rubio is not doing this in terms of coming forward about, the declaration of the UAP issue, just on a political standpoint. I believe that Mark Rubio, is someone who has had either knows someone who has a belief in this or an experience, or he himself has had something.
Okay.
People do
I'm going
not
to leave it right there.
Okay.
Victor, we're going to pick that up on the other side with
sure.
Daniel
Let's
Sheehan.
do that.
Victor Viggiani stays with me. Daniel P. Sheehan next, Making Contact. Stay with us.
You want the truth? You can handle the truth. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio. To get the truth, call Richard now at 416-360-0740 or or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
This is Zoomer Radio Toronto, CFZM FM and CFZM AM, owned and operated by MZ Media Incorporated.
Live from Toronto, Canada, Earth, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett on Zoomer Radio.
Thanks for inviting me into your home, your long-haul truck, RV, camper, taxi, your parents' well-appointed basement with the simulated wood paneling, electric fireplace, and the painting of dogs playing poker, your loft, that greasy spoon just off the interstate, and your cabin in the woods. All right, we are going to speak with, Victor Viggiani from Zealand News Network stays with us, and this hour, Daniel P. Sheehan is with us to talk about his 5-day conference called Making Contact. Daniel is a constitutional and public interest lawyer, public speaker, political activist, educator. Over the last 45, 50 years, he's participated in numerous legal cases of public interest, including the Pentagon Papers case, Watergate break-in case, the Silkwood case, the Greensboro Massacre, the Lepenka bombing case, and others. He established the Christic Institute and the Romero Institute, two nonprofit public policy centers. Daniel has spoken publicly about UFOs, alien visitations, and has participated in Disclosure Project events. He also represents Luis Elizondo, the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, in a case against the Department of Defense. Since 2015, Daniel has lectured on American history, politics, and the assassination of John F. Kennedy at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And he's currently chief counsel, as I say, at the Romero Institute, where he focuses on the Lakota People's Law Project. Also staying with us, of course, again, Victor Viggiani from Zealand News Network. Daniel Sheehan, welcome back to the program. How are you?
Terrific. I'm fine. Still hectic. Getting ready. We've got like 21 different speakers that we have to coordinate, coming on one after another every morning for 5 days, and then major panel discussions in the afternoon, and then circles of people gathering to have their own individual discussions, etc., in the evening. So there's a lot to do here. I'm usually just doing trials in investigations and things, but we've actually come to the point now of trying to gather people together who are leading experts in this field to respond to this latest flap of UFOs and Defense Department statements and people going on television. So it's a pretty intense period right now.
All right. Again, and this is Making Contact, happening August 18th to the 22nd, 5 days. If you go to makingcontact.com, or if you're on my website, strangeplanet.ca, right under Daniel's name there, you'll see the link. Just click on that, makingcontact.com, August 18th to the 22nd. And let me just run down the list of speakers. We've got, of course, Stephen Bassett. We have Jimmy Blanchette is a chemical scientist, extensive background in electronics and radio engineering. We'll talk about what he'll be discussing. Chris Bledsoe, industry expert, commercial pilot. Ralph Blumenthal, of course, the journalist who, along with, yes, the famous December 2017 New York Times article on ATIP that really sort of blew the doors off this. Jimmy Church, of course, radio host, presenter, Fade to Black. Richard Dolan, Luis Elizondo, Dr. James Garrison, Ray Hernandez, Linda Moulton Howe, let's see, Barbara Lamb, Mary Rodwell, Donald Schmidt, quite a lineup. Mark Sims, co-founder of the New Paradigm Institute. There seems to be a real sense of urgency with this. 5 days. It's like you're really trying to do an end run around the government. You're not waiting for them for disclosure. Just talk to me a little bit about your sense of urgency.
Well, what it is here that we're dealing with is that there has been a kind of a shock that got sent through the Defense Department when Luis Elizondo resigned back in October of 2017 in protest over the fact that he, after 10 years of first being the security director for and then the director of the major secret program inside the U.S. Defense Department investigating UFOs, kept complaining about being blocked and not giving him adequate information. He was objecting to the fact that high-level ranking military officials were not briefed in on this program. He couldn't ascertain any legitimate protocol that was in operation inside the Defense Department to deal with UFOs. And he, very importantly, he discovered that no matter how many of these sightings there were, and no matter how verified they were, and no matter how directly connected with some of our United States military bases they were, that nobody was treating it like it was a threat. And he was a trained security officer, and so his hackles were up substantially over this. And then as he became the director of the whole program, moving from just a strictly security perspective, he was more baffled by the fact that nobody seemed to be treating this like a threat. And rather than him trying to just continue explaining to them why he thought it might be a threat from a security point of view, he was trying to figure out why it was that they were acting that way. And why it was that they were pretending that they weren't interested in it. There wasn't anything uninteresting about the issue. And when he tried to get major officers, ranking officers, to come and help him on this, he recognized that they were afraid. They were afraid to talk about this particular subject. And so it became clear to him that there were some kind of forces above the normal constitutional structures of our government that seemed to be in charge of keeping secret this information. And he was objecting to it. He tried to reach out and get to Secretary of Defense Mattis with his complaints about this, and he was cut off. And so he resigned in protest. And he took with him 3 videos that were indisputable gun camera F-18 Hornet videotapes of UFOs. They weren't swamp gas. They weren't searchlights reflecting off clouds. They weren't flocks of birds being misidentified as UFOs, and they weren't weather balloons. These were craft. I mean, regular solid craft that were reflecting radar signals. They were traveling at 43,000 miles an hour, clocked inside our atmosphere, which would have burnt to a crisp any traditional vehicle that they had any kind of knowledge about at all. And they were accelerating coming in from outer space and coming in and descending from over 80,000 feet high down to within 50 feet of the surface of our oceans within 1 second, and then stopping on a dime, which would have imposed 600 Gs of force on the vehicle and turned into soup anybody that was in it. And then they would go underwater and proceed at over 200 miles an hour underwater. And they were being monitored by our submarines. They were flying all around our carrier fleets. They were flying over nuclear weapons missile sites and shutting off the missiles. And yet nobody in the military was treating them as though they were some kind of a threat. Now this didn't make any sense to him. And so when he resigned and brought these videotapes with him, he brought them to the New York Times. And very importantly, the New York Times board of editors made a decision to publish this information. Now, you mentioned at the top of the introduction that I actually served as legal counsel for the New York Times, among 4 other lawyers, on behalf of the New York Times, getting to publish the 47 volumes of the previously top secret Pentagon papers that revealed the travesty that was involved in the Vietnam War, the lies, the deceptions, the duplicity, the drug smuggling, the political assassination programs, all the things that were going on there that were being kept secret from the American people, the vast majority of whom were up in arms over the Vietnam War, trying to get them to stop it. And yet there was this bureaucratic secret that was being kept in these papers. And we worked together to get these published. And Lou Elizondo became so distressed that this was going on inside our Defense Department that he went to the New York Times, and I was familiar with the process that went on inside the New York Times to make the decision to go ahead and publish these theretofore top secret papers of the Pentagon. So I know that there was a very important step has taken place here with the leadership of the New York Times making a decision to publish this information and to reveal the fact that UFOs are real, that all of the years of lying and duplicity and deception that have been going on the part of our military, the same kind of thing that we're experiencing today with people being hauled out of the embassy in Kabul in Afghanistan on the wheels of helicopters, again, just like in Vietnam, when the entire military industrial complex was lying to us and saying, oh, this isn't going to happen, the Taliban, we're in negotiations with them, they're not going to overrun the country, things are going to be fine. I mean, and trying to conceal the fact that our United States government, Republican and Democratic administrations alike, just colluded to invade and occupy the Middle Eastern oil fields at the end of the Cold War.
Yeah, we don't seem to learn our lessons.
Lies.
We don't seem to learn our lessons.
Lies. And
Right.
so what's happening here is the same people are in charge of this policy of keeping secret from the American people and from the people of the world the existence of these UFOs. And now that this is leaking out because of a decision made, not only by Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon, the former Assistant Secretary of Defense in charge of intelligence under both Bill Clinton and W. Bush, to reveal this information to the New York Times, and this very important decision made by the New York Times to publish this. Because of this now, we've entered into an entirely new period here. And what we're trying to do is to not leave it in the hands of the same governing institutions that have portrayed this as a lie down through all these years, not to leave it in their hands to get it resolved. We want to have the American people step forward. We want the people to be educated about what it is that's known about this phenomenon. We want them to know that the person that was in charge for 8 out of the 10 years of this secret program has concluded that these are not only not ours, but they're not Russian and they're not Chinese, period. That when he's asked by the Associated Press, this is Lou Elizondo I'm talking about, when he was asked by the 3 different reporters in a meeting with the Associated Press, well, if these aren't ours and they're not Russian and they're not Chinese, what are they? And he said, well, the people that we're working with in secret study of these things, the most likely explanation is that they're extraterrestrial. And you could see the reporter, Dan Huff, his name was, from the Associated Press. He just sat there kind of staring. And I was like, what? Like, here is the head of the investigation for the United States Defense Department telling him that the likelihood is that these are extraterrestrial in origin, and yet still nothing's happening. Those same bureaucratic institutions that are locked in to the major corporations and the major military defense corporations that are trying to harness this information and keep the information secret and figure out how to develop this technology in some way that could benefit their stockholders, and to keep this secret. Here we are with our planet burning down around our ears. We've got massive fires going all through Europe and all through the United States now. We've got massive storms brewing because of the global climate change. And these people are concealing the information about a technology that we might be able to get access to get off petroleum, to get off oil, to get off natural gas and coal, stop contaminating our planet. And in the face of hundreds and hundreds of people who have asserted very credibly that people who had no reason to lie about these things, they're doctors and lawyers and police officers and famous politicians who've had face-to-face encounters with some of the occupants of these UFOs and are being told over and over and over again by their extraterrestrial contacts that we have to stop polluting our planet, that we've got a planet that's one of the rare planets in the entire galaxy that actually gestates life. And they're coming here trying to gather DNA samples and flora and fauna and stuff so they can seed life elsewhere in our galaxy, and we're destroying it.
All right, Daniel, let me just jump in here. Daniel P. Sheehan. Daniel Sheehan is with us, and the conference is Making Contact, August 18th to the 22nd. Extraterrestrials are here. Whitley Strieber, Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, Ralph Blumenthal, Luis Elizondo. Victor Viggiani from Zealand News Network. I know you're champing at the bit, rather, to get in here. Victor, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to raise an issue with you, Danny. Once again, welcome to the program. You and I have spoken and have had a close connection with Dr. John Mack. And you have gone out of your way to articulate why Making Contact and the Paradigm and the New Paradigm Research Institute has made the move to engage contactees and experiencers within the framework of the Making Contact initiative. Could you just tell us a little bit about why you feel Dr. John Mack was instrumental in making you move forward on this?
Oh, sure, yeah. Back in 1994, for the people who weren't aware of this, is Dr. John Mack, who was the PhD tenured professor and chair of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard University, at the Harvard Medical School, was having sent to him high-ranking military officials and government officials, anybody who tried to report an official contact with a UFO and tried to report this officially, were being immediately ordered to go get a psychiatric examination. This was part of a concerted program on the part of the bureaucracy to stop them from making these kind of reports. And some of these high-ranking officers have been sent to Harvard University, to Harvard Medical School, to get one of these, highly qualified examinations. Dr. John Mack is the man who was administering these psychiatric tests. And after any number of these, he was completely surprised because he had administered these standard psychiatric tests, and he said that he was finding over and over and over again that these people were not only totally within the normal parameters of normalcy psychologically, but they were very important and influential people, very responsible, very credible people, and they were very detailed in the experiences that they were having in the contacts with the UFOs, and even some of them with these occupants of the UFOs. And he wrote an article about this, saying what an extraordinary phenomenon this is. After he'd interviewed more and more people about this, and he wrote an article to the New England Journal of Medicine in 1994, and he submitted it, and they refused to publish it. And he took it back and rewrote it and put in tons of more footnotes. He was a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, in addition to being the chair of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. But he was a Pulitzer Prize-winning author who had written the Pulitzer Prize-winning the biography of T.E. Lawrence, the psychobiography, and they refused to publish it. So he had it published as a book. And this Harvard faculty committee assembled itself and dragged him up in front of this tribunal and started excoriating him. I mean, it's like as if he was like Copernicus or Galileo or someone, that was trying to confront them with some kind of dimension of reality that they just did not want heard. And so they dragged him up there. He called me and asked me to represent him because I graduated from Harvard College and Harvard Law School and had been to the Harvard Divinity School to do my master's and PhD work. And I was a fairly well-known defense attorney and representing people. And so I represented him. And at that time, John came to realize two things. Number one is that what this was a complete clash of worldviews. That there was this scientific, logical, positivist, materialist worldview that was being espoused and defended by Harvard University that viewed itself, not without some justification, as being sort of the seat of the liberal ethic in Western civilization, and defending an entire worldview of kind of Newtonian, Cartesian, scientific, logical positivism. And that they were being challenged by this phenomenon to think that there was an actual extraterrestrial civilization potentially coming here in UFOs and exploring our planet, and somehow we didn't know it, or the Harvard University didn't know it, or it was being concealed from most of the people of the world. You know, it was so anathema to them that they wouldn't tolerate him talking about it. So what John decided to do finally, after we finally pushed them back, you know, and threatened to bring on a full grand rounds at the Harvard University. John and I went and met with Lawrence Rockefeller, and Lawrence agreed to pay for an entire grand rounds where we could bring all the witnesses before Harvard University, before the faculty committee. I was delighted with this, as you might guess. You know, I was charged by John to go and talk with all of these people. He introduced me to everybody, to Bud Hopkins, to Stanton Friedman, to David Jacobs, to everybody, Linda Moulton Howe, Stephen Greer, everybody. I got to meet everybody who was involved in the program, trying to find out about this stuff. And I started assembling them to be witnesses to present to Harvard University. Well, they threw in the towel. They gave up and apologized and said that, somehow we were misunderstanding what they were doing. They were just trying to find out about this. I mean, it's a total lie. But the bottom
Daniel, pardon my interruption, Danny. I've got to jump in here because we have a timeout here. We'll come back and continue to delve into, making contact. The extraterrestrials are here. That's happening August 18th to the 22nd, makingcontact.com. Victor Viggiani stays with us from Zealand News Network, and we'll also talk about Danny representing Luis Elizondo as well. Back with more in a minute. Stay with us.
Corporations, governments, and sometimes entire civilizations. What goes up must come down, and it lands on The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio.
Here's a resolution for 2021. Reduce stress and enhance your immune system. ESS60 from C60 Evo. C60 is the carbon-60 molecule known to deliver more than 172 times the power of vitamin C. 172 times. ESS60 is the purest form of C60, a known antiviral, antibacterial, and anti-inflammatory remedy that works. ESS60 neutralizes free radicals from cell metabolization and external toxins to help minimize inflammation and maximize detoxification. Further, people report better sleep, more energy, and renewed mental clarity when they take our ESS60 organic oil. To order your miracle molecule ESS60, go to c60evo.com/Richard-Serrett. c60evo.com/Richard-Serrett. Buy now and save 10% by using the coupon code EVRS at checkout. Again, use the coupon code EVRS at checkout.
In your own home. To learn how to secure your care your way, call 800-929-6606 or visit yourcareyourway.ca.
This Sunday, more inspiring life lessons on Zoomer Radio. Join host Lawrence R. Fuller for an hour of life-changing insights and inspiration. Lawrence is opening up, sharing important lessons he's been taught about life and how to live it fully. He'd also like to hear from you.
Inspiring life lessons, Sunday mornings at 9 this summer on Zoom.
is being pulled over your eyes. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett from Zoomer Radio. To reach Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Welcome back. Danny Sheehan stays with us. He's assembled an extraordinary panel of experts and panelists to take a deep dive into the most profound issues mankind has ever considered and to come together to build the foundational structures for this new era. It's the conference is called Making Contact. Extraterrestrials are here. It's happening August 18th to the 22nd. And you can register at makingcontact.com, makingcontact.com. Danny, you're representing Luis Elizondo against the Pentagon. What is happening? They're trying to erase his history?
Well, there's a process that's been going on here. That when Lou first, came to the conclusion that he was being systematically blocked by personnel inside the Defense Department from effectively conducting this investigation, and attempted to reach out to the Secretary of Defense. And they blocked him and stopped him from doing it. And he went to the New York Times and revealed the reality of these UFOs. The elements inside the Defense Department began to reach out and make completely false statements, saying that, there was no such thing as any such program. That Lou Elizondo was just lying and making this up. He never worked for the Defense Department. It was just totally ridiculous. And then when people tried to respond with Freedom of Information Act requests to get access to the internal files showing this, they said, by the way, we destroyed all of them because we concluded that they were of such little historical value that we didn't need to keep them anymore, like within weeks. It's totally ridiculous. It turns out that Lou had copies of these things, and so that we filed a complaint with the Inspector General of the Defense Department against all these people. It said this is a total outrage. This is completely unconstitutional. This is a total lying to the American people, who in a democracy are supposed to have information in order to make decisions about the basic policies of our country. And they're deceiving not only the American citizens, they're deceiving the people in Congress. And so Lou reached out and went to various members of the Congress, like Marco Rubio, who was the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee at the time, and revealed all this information to them, and got some of them. He gotten Harry Reid, who was the Democratic leader, the majority leader in the United States Senate. He got Ted Stevens of Alaska. He got Dan Inouye from Hawaii. He got Marco Rubio. He got all these people to take a look at all this stuff. They all started demanding that the Defense Department turn over information to the Senate Intelligence Committee and to Congress about this. This was a major step in trying to bring in the institutions, the constitutional institutions of our government, to confront the Defense Department, to make them and their military contractors, that these Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and these major corporations that have just got their fists deeply dug into this technology and taking it and keeping it for themselves and trying to transform it into private profit for their stockholders. That the Congress of the United States has now started trying to make efforts to get some of this information turned over to them. And Lou is playing a very major role in this, as is Christopher Mellon, as I mentioned, the former Assistant Secretary of Defense under both Republican and Democratic administrations, to try to get this information to the United States Congress. Now, that's what's going on now. We're going to have meetings, repeated meetings with members of the Inspector General's office inside the Defense Department. In placing this information in front of them, it's perfectly clear that they've been cut out of this information. They have to be told the truth. If they start going into this and conducting a genuine investigation, they're at the present time engaged in what they call an evaluation. An evaluation to try to determine what action any agency of the Defense Department has actually ever undertaken with regard to the UFO issue. I mean, like ever have taken. And they're trying to find this out right now. And they're going to run into the same stonewalling, of course, Our job is to help the Inspector General to the extent to which they're in good faith and willing to try to do this actual evaluation, to get access to this information, to work in cooperation with the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, the United States Justice Department, other constitutional agencies of our government, to try to pry this information out of the national security state bureaucracy. This is a bureaucracy that has come into being since the passage of the National Security Act of 1947 that established the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Council, eventually the Defense Industrial Command, all these different agencies that are part of the new national security state that has evolved here in our country, which is blatantly unconstitutional. That view themselves as being above the law. We saw them functioning in the Iran-Contra case, where they had the entire military and Central Intelligence Agency were smuggling weapons to the Contras down in Central America, smuggling not only cocaine up from out of the country to buy weapons off the books so they wouldn't tell Congress about it, smuggling heroin out of Southeast Asia all the way through the Batista regime in Cuba. This stuff has been going on now for our entire lifetimes. And on our watch of the baby boom people now, that we have a responsibility here to stop this thing. It's been taking place during our lifetime. We have to bring it to a close before we pass from this scene. And so what you see is a lot of the people who've been spending a lot of their adult career trying to get at this information and stop this from going on are now coming to the fore. We are going to mobilize as citizens to instigate every single legitimate constitutional agency of our government to move against this national security state, to extract this information from them, and to disenable these connections to these huge military corporations they're not only secreting this information from the public to the detriment of our entire planet for their own personal profit, but they're in fact now generating entire corporate military operations like Blackwater in Tiger Swan. They're actually building entire militaries, battalion-sized militaries to be hired by corporations to deploy them against citizens of the United States, like they did up at the Dakota Access Pipeline against the Lakota people. I mean, millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of training on the United States military forces that they've trained in special forces and deployed over to the Middle East to part of this fiasco that you see falling apart here today. Invading and occupying the Middle Eastern oil fields, the holy lands of all of those people, and killing tens of thousands of them, and destroying the entire infrastructure of their countries, all at the behest of these corporations to try to seize and control their oil. So that we can feed this massive military machine that runs on oil and petroleum, our battleships and our aircraft carriers, the non-nuclear ones. This has got to stop. This key of them secreting this information about the UFOs and the existence of an entire extraterrestrial civilization, which they are keeping secret from the American people and from the people of the world for their own, trying to figure out how they can bend this to their own private profit and benefit. We've got to stop this. Our planet is on fire. The storms are destroying our planet. The sea levels are rising. These same people have built over 415 private nuclear power plants around the world. Over 115 of them that are all right on the seacoast. And they're generating global climate change, which is raising the sea levels. And we're going to have as many as 100 Fukushimas.
All right, Danny, I've got to jump in here. We've got to take another time out. We'll pick it up on the other side. Victor Viggiani, Zealand News Network, and again the conference, Making Contact, August 18th to 22nd. Register makingcontact.com. We'll tell you more about that conference when we come back. My name is Richard Serrett. Stay with us.
This is no place for the naive or the faint-hearted. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio.
Attention Giants.
Hey there, I'm hard at work on another edition of Inner Sanctum, my free monthly newsletter. Inner Sanctum features my monthly brief, a column of my thoughts and opinions on what's happening in the world. It features a spotlight on a past guest, a look ahead to an upcoming episode of my weekly syndicated radio program, The Conspiracy Show. It features a look at this month in conspiracy and UFO history, and my Conspiracy Unlimited podcast episode pick of the month, and so much more. To get your free monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, delivered to your email inbox, just go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on Inner Sanctum and register. It's fast, easy, and again, absolutely free.
Introducing the LCBO Summer Hot List, a list of refreshing ways to help make this summer in Ontario one to remember. Like hot list idea number 2, why not turn any summer day into the perfect vacation? You can whisk your taste buds away to Italy's Amalfi coast with the LCBO exclusive Amalfi Aperitivo Spritz, available in convenient single-serve bottles. Just twist and serve. Que bello! Find the widest selection of summer refreshment at the LCBO. Visit lcbo.com for home delivery or for same-day pickup.
Previously on Dave's Corner Garage.
What you can do as well, if you've got somebody hot for your car, you can meet them at a donut shop or something like that, so they don't know where you live or where you're going to be parking your car.
Hey, whatever two consenting adults do with a hot car in a donut shop parking lot is their business. Right, officer? 6. Join us for Dave's Corner Garage every Saturday morning at 10 on Zoomer Radio and at davescornergarage.com. Presented by Trident Tire.
Where there's smoke, there's The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett from Zoomer Radio.
All right, let's discuss making contact. Extraterrestrials are here. Victor Viggiani, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to broach the issue, and Danny, that you and I talked about. I know with Mark Sims, we had some long conversations about this, and making contact in the New Paradigm Institute seems to be completely engaged in trying to have this huge community of experiences or contactees, or as some people used to call them, abductees, and mobilizing this community of experiencers to somehow train them to engage these off-world civilizations, to find out, exactly what they want from us and how these civilizations can kind of impart to us what they may want to do in engaging our planet. And can you talk to us a little bit about how the New Paradigm Institute wants to kind of raise the level of conversation with respect to these really, really unique individuals who've had contact with extraterrestrials?
Yeah, well, this started, Victor, back with John Mack and I, after we sort of pushed back Harvard University, who was trying to suppress him, and when they ended up apologizing and letting him go back to work, we started talking about establishing this New Paradigm Institute, because he realized in doing his work that the people who had now recalled having had one of these kind of contact experiences, and that they had this some sort of a strange post-hypnotic suggestion implanted in them so that they couldn't remember this, and that John was capable working with Stanislav Grof to not hypnotize these people, but to have them do this relaxing breathing. They call it holotropic breathing exercise. That it basically calms people, centers people very much, so they can recall things. There's no false memory recalls here of any kind. These are all completely accurate memories that people have. And that they realized that the people who had one or more of these contact experiences, it turns out that they've been having them for most of their life. That it wasn't just a one-off type of experience. That they realized that they had the contact experiences from the time they were young, and that these had happened repeatedly over their lifetimes. So what John decided to do is he said, look, I did it with him. It was sort of my idea when we started talking this. As an investigator, as an investigative attorney, I said, wait a second, this is a fabulous resource here. These people are having repeated face-to-face encounters with extraterrestrial beings from these UFOs. I sorted through a lot of the different people to find the most credible of all of these people that we could find. And then what we would do is they would go, and Stanislav Grof would train these people in the holotropic breathing. And so that when they realized that one of these contact experiences was getting ready to start, they would say, for example, that they could sort of tell when one of these things was starting to happen. They would get this feeling that the whole air around them would be filled kind of like electric. If they weren't in the middle of the night asleep or something, but they could tell that this was happening. And what they would do is they would start doing this holotropic breathing and get very, very calm and very, very centered. And so that when the ET people appeared, they wouldn't freak out. There was this one young woman, for example, her name was Karen. John referred to her as Karen. She used to get so upset when they would show up, is she would throw things at them. She would throw lamps at them and throw books at them and hold on to the furniture and kick at them. And so they would freeze her. They would zap her. And then that made her even more frightened because she was kind of paralyzed and freaked out. And so that she decided that she was going to get this holotropic breathing exercise, and she did. And so the next time that these beings appeared, there they are standing in her living room or bedroom, and she's very calm, and she had been doing the holotropic breathing. And so they were kind of shocked and surprised that she was as calm and friendly as she was. So she began to talk with them. And they actually, for the first time, brought her to see a baby that she remembered having had. And it was the first time she'd ever been able to do that. And so they acted in a way that was very friendly toward her and cooperative with her. And so then she was acting in a friendly and a cooperative way toward them. And so that John and I decided that what we would do is try to establish there in Cambridge a new paradigm institute that would begin to study, what it was going to be like now to actually have contact and direct communication with extraterrestrial beings, as citizens. And we have been very, very active. I've been very active, along with John, in reaching out in the citizens diplomacy program with the Soviet Union. That I actually sent Dr. Jim Garrison, who was one of my staff people at the Jesuit National Headquarters. I was general counsel for the Jesuit National Headquarters in their National Social Ministry office in Washington, D.C. And I sent one of my staff people over to Russia and actually met with Gorbachev when he was still the Secretary of Agriculture. And we met first with Brezhnev, and then Brezhnev died, and then we were getting set to meet with Andropov, and Shevardnadze said, no, you don't need to meet with Andropov, he won't be there that long. Meet with Gorbachev. And we met with Gorbachev. Dr. James Garrison is going to be speaking here at our conference. Dr. Garrison is going to be speaking, let's see here, on Thursday. August 19th. He's going to be talking right after Professor Jeff Kripal. Jeff Kripal is the chairman of the Department of Religion at Rice University at Texas, and is also the chairman of the board of the Esalen Institute here in California. And so Dr. James Garrison is going to talk there, and he may well share some of the information about our citizen diplomacy directly with Gorbachev and leading to glasnost and perestroika, getting him to step back out of the Cold War. This is a product of the citizen diplomacy program. And so John Mack and I were talking about doing this with the people who are experiencers, who the most credible of the people that we really had confidence in could benefit from this kind of training, and who were willing to start a dialogue with the extraterrestrial beings to say, look, okay, let's have some careful conversations here. What are you doing here? What is it that you're after? Let us try to explain to you if there's something that you're not quite understanding. Like, you got to understand, you can't come here and kind of involuntarily impregnate our people and then take babies from us. And you might think you're doing a really good thing. You may think you're seeding life elsewhere in the universe, but come on. You guys have got to understand us a little better. We'd like to try to understand you better. We do not trust the people that bring us the Vietnam War, that bring us the invasion of the Middle East, that bring us the threat of nuclear weapons all the time, that bring us the threat of massive global climate change. You can't trust these people to make policies with an extraterrestrial civilization. This the old Sufi saying, when a pickpocket meets a saint, all he sees are his pockets. So these people in the military-industrial complex, all they see when they see the UFOs, they go, "Oh, look, that could make a great weapon. We can capture their UFOs and figure out how to make super fast jets, so we can establish full spectrum dominance over the planet."
All right,
So
Danny, I got to jump in again. Pardon the interruption. We'll take another time out. Daniel P. Sheehan, Making Contact is the conference, August 18th to the 22nd, makingcontact.com, makingcontact.com to register. Victor Viggiani stays with us as well. Back with more in a moment.
Loose lips sink ships, and sometimes corporations. Got something to say? Call Richard Serrett now at 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Is your financial advisor helping you to...
I don't need to tell you how important building and sustaining a healthy immune system is these days. And just in time, my good friends at Get the Tea are offering a special package called the Immune Builder. You get 1 month's supply of Life Change Super Tea. That's 8 bags. 1 bottle of Bioastin. That's 75 capsules. Now, Bioastin, or astaxanthin, is known as one of nature's most powerful antioxidants and provides a wide range of impressive health benefits. The Immune Builder also includes 1 bottle of Potent C Wild Alaskan Sockeye Omegas. That's 90 gel caps. And 1 copy of the book Natural Astaxanthin, Hawaii's Super Nutrient by Dr. William Sears. There's so much more than tea at getthetea.com. Get your Immune Builder right now. Not available in any store. Use the code UNLIMITED and all your purchases ship for free. The Immune Builder from getthetea.com.
Getting a hearing test is very easy.
Do it for your family. Do it for yourself. Hearing Life now has virtual services. Go to hearinglife.ca for details. That's hearinglife.ca.
Hearing Life Canada, a hearing care clinic for life.
Sunday on Care Talk, the Assurance Home Care Show. Learn about home care from someone who's made it her business to know. Chris McGinn, co-owner of Assurance Home Care. Chris answers important questions about Alzheimer's, dementia, and mobility. And of course, we answer your questions too. Choosing a caregiver for someone you love? Start the conversation. Join us for Care Talk, the Assurance Home Care Show, Sunday afternoon at 1 on Zoomer Radio. Big Brother is listening, and so are you. To The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio. To speak with Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free 1-866-740-4740.
We're back with Danny Sheehan. And the conference is called Making Contact, makingcontact.com. It's 5 days, August 18th to the 22nd. And you've got a number of great panelists. You've got Richard Dolan. You've got Stephen Bassett, Chris Bledsoe, Ralph Blumenthal, of course, Jimmy Church. Let's see, Luis Elizondo, Dr. James Garrison, Ray Hernandez, Linda Moulton Howe. I'm fascinated by the work of Jimmy Blanchett, and this he became interested in something called moon bounce communication. This method of bouncing radio waves off the surface of the moon for two-way communication. But now he's developing that for non-human contact with non-human intelligence. Can you talk to me a little bit about that, Danny?
Well, you'd have to talk to Mark about that more than me. I've seen what they're doing there, and I've watched some of these things. I keep asking them. Look, here's what it is. They've got these radio devices. They're radio transmitters they're really high-end walkie-talkies and radios, where you can talk to people, all the halfway across the country on one of these. It's like a portable ham radio. And what they do is they set it to a particular frequency that they have determined, and they send out broadcasts. And what they do is they then take the telephones or the radios, and they put them in these little satchels. Like if you were to put it in like a radar range, one of those little those stove things that you can't get any radio communications through, and they put them in there, and yet somehow there's a signal that comes back. And if you have 3 of these radios and you send out signals on just one of them, and you have them all tuned to the same station, only the one that you sent the signal out on will start getting a return signal. Now, what they've learned how to do is they've learned how to encode pictures, photographs, text, things into sound. If you've seen the movie Contact, they discovered that what happens is they were receiving audio signals from space in that movie that Carl Sagan and his wife wrote. And they were getting these audible signals, and they had to figure out a way to decode them, to translate them into a visual, which was a blueprint in that particular case of how to build a machine that could transport a person interdimensionally to other planets. It was a fictional account, but the technology was true, that you can transform sound into pictures and pictures into sound. And what they're doing is they're broadcasting full-scale photographs and pictures and text out on these radios. And within a short period of time, the one radio that you actually broadcast on will start receiving signals. And these audio signals that are coming in, they have not yet been able to decipher them. They've not been able to figure out what the coding program is by means of which they can translate these down into what's being sent back to them. But both Mark and Jimmy Blanchett are convinced that these are coming back from some extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional source. Now, I'm not at all expert on that at all. I've seen them doing this thing. I keep saying, look, when you can translate the signals that are coming back into something, that is either a Morse code or encryption or something, so there's signals or text or words or pictures or something like that, then talk to me. But they're working at it, and I can tell you that Mark Sims has made his career at this stuff. He knows how to do computer programming. He knows how to do graphic design. He's the one that figured out how to transform the photographs and the text into audio signals. And so he and Jimmy Blanchett are working at figuring out how to translate these communications that are coming back. They believe fervently that they're engaged in a direct radio communication with extraterrestrial life. And yet they have just not figured out how yet quite to translate the signals that are coming back to them. So that's something that Jimmy Blanchett will talk about. He's going to be talking about that at one of the after hours gatherings. I think it's going to be on Friday or Saturday night, on Saturday, August 21st or Friday, August 20th. He is going to be doing a demonstration of this. And I think most people like me are going to say, that's really interesting. That's really bizarre. But tell me when you got it translated so that I know what it is they're saying. But they think they're hot on the trail of this.
All right. Fascinating. All right, Victor, over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise the issue, Danny, to the average listener who's listening to the program right now, who's not had any experience with the multiplicity of the engagements that you've had, both politically and in an ethereal sense. How do we convince the general public not only to pay attention to what Making Contact is doing, but to the whole idea that we are in fact being engaged, by off-world civilizations? How does the average citizen become, I don't like the word convinced, but at least engaged in a narrative or dialogue about the possibility of this actually happening? How do we get that language out there to have people understand what we're trying to do with this?
I think that one of the main ways we have to do this is to generate a multi-season scripted television dramatic series that actually conveys the actual experiences that people are having, not fiction. And it's very difficult. Hollywood is in charge of all of the technology of these kinds of things. Instantaneously start trying to fictionalize this stuff. And they want to make it more dramatic or more scary or more something, you know, and that they just instantly run right off the rails and start making up stuff about this. What we've got to do is have such a careful, professionally produced and directed and scripted series, television dramatic series on cable, to be able to communicate to people the drama of these stories, of the extraordinary experiences that people are having. And that's how we're going to get this through to people. You know, that we have to, you know, I've got people right now talking to me about wanting to do such a series, but, you know, that they keep on saying, well, you know, we've got to change this, we've got to change that. You know, we stop it, you know, just stop it. You know, we're not going to do that. The truth carries a power of its own. And the problem is they're all, again, into wanting to make as much money as they possibly can, and they want to dumb the thing way down so that they can titillate people and have car chases and have sex scenes and, you know, all of the things that they want to do to try to maximize their audience. We have to find people that are interested in this in the professional world, in the professional media world, who are interested in getting the truth of the subject matter communicated. Not in just maximizing their audiences by dumbing it down so they can get, you know, fill, you know, seats, you know, and get more money. But this is what we've got to do. Those of us who are devoted to getting the truth out about this have to speak the truth scrupulously, and to get these productions made. You know, we can do podcasts, we can do documentary films, we can do other things. And the thing is, people have to stop lying. People have to stop lying. You know, there are people even in the UFO field, you know, they just get too carried away with themselves and they start making up things, you know, and we all know it, and we got to stop having those people come to conferences and speak. Don't give them a stage, you know, get people to stop lying. And tell the truth about what it is that's going on, and break into the media and do podcasts. Do podcasts, do documentary films, do mini-series, scripted dramatic mini-series, do full-scale multi-season series about this, and stop fictionalizing this stuff.
All right, we're out of time, Danny. I just want to, I don't think I've actually mentioned on the air, this is a virtual conference. That kind of goes without saying these days. It's a virtual conference. Again, August the 18th to the 22nd, Making Contact. You can register at makingcontact.com. Danny, thank you so much for your time.
Terrific, gang. You can see it's an important subject. I take it very seriously, and I want people to come and listen to the speakers we put together. I'm positive that you're going to be extraordinarily better informed at the end of this week than at the beginning of it.
All right, Danny, thank you so much. Makingcontact.com. Victor, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Richard, as always.
All right. That's it for me. Now, I'm on holidays next week. Sunday, we'll have a best of conspiracy show for you. So we'll dust something off from the audio archives. In the meantime, don't be afraid. There's nothing concealed that won't be revealed, and nothing hidden that won't be made known. What you hear in the dark, speak in the light. What I say in a whisper, proclaim from the housetops. Move over, Aphrodite, I'm coming home. Good night.